Just a few notes here before we start. So with the IMO 2050 net zero ambitions, we're now becoming to what we're calling, let's say, the first real hurdle to overcome. We're getting even closer to the implementation of EU Maritime for 1st January next year, and only 3 months away, which monitors the greenhouse gas intensity of ships trading in EU waters. So meanwhile, EU ETS has now been applied for shipping since January, and highlighting the need for accurate vessel emission data to understand the potential exposure to non-compliance during voyage. It's a lot to consider, and today in our panelists, we're going to talk a little bit about from each perspective of each different company. Just to set the scene, with the 2023 aiming for net zero by 2050, and IMO currently working on adopting midterm measures, as we know, with the MEPC coming up, global pricing mechanism, and a global fuel standard from 2027. And what we're looking today is to understand aligning how an organization from a long-term strategy perspective can meet that target, but also from a short to mid-term measures in terms of decarbonizing existing fleet. So I'm going to turn today to first Sveinung. Welcome. The Angelicoussis group has a strong presence in energy transportation in all segments. How are you balancing the increasing regulatory pressure to decarbonize with the current demands for traditional fuel transport? Are there any specific technologies or fuel types you're investing to bridge this gap?
Thank you, Elina. And first of all, thanks to inviting me here once again. It's always a very pleasant place to be. I think first, from our side, Angelicoussis group, at the moment we have 143 vessels on the water, 54 tankers, 47 LNG carriers, and 42 dry ships. So obviously the energy transition is something we have and are taking very, very seriously. And the objective of net zero by 2050 is, I would say, part of everything we do. I think that there's two things most people maybe are not aware of, and that is that there's not one solution for one type of ships that will fit on other type of ships. We are in the tramping business, so what might work for the container segment does not necessarily work for the way we trade our ships. I think that the path we have chosen, and obviously as a company, the own company, we take the long-term view. If you order a ship today, you get it in 2027 or maybe even later. So 2050, the ship will still most likely be traded. So 2050 is actually tomorrow, if you make an investment today. For our strategy for decarbonization, we have decided that the best available low-carbon fuel is LNG. LNG is safe, it's available, it's proven, it's price competitive. What more can you ask for? It gives you a direct reduction of 23 to 25% of emissions reductions from day one. At the moment, we have, for example, 4 dual-fuel LNG VLCCs in operation. They've now been in operation for a year. If you compare with the 10-year-old VLCC that burns conventional fuel, actually the reduction on these vessels is 40%, 40. So if that's not something that makes a difference, I don't know what is. I think the market recognizes this today. We see that charterers are showing very strong interest for dual-fuel LNG vessels. So our intention is to continue down that path. There are a lot of people that say, well, why not methanol? And I'm saying we need all the different solutions. There's not one simple solution. Methanol, I think, had a bit of a big positive start. I think today people have become a bit more realistic as to the availability, in particular, of methanol, because it has to be green. Grey methanol emits more CO2 than heavy fuel. That doesn't solve anything. So, from our side, I think the solution we see today, which is the best solution going forward, is LNG as the marine fuel. We were just in Houston last week on the big LNG conference called GasTech. It's very nice when people come up to you and say, can you please do some business? I have LNG bunkers. Today, we can bunker all over the world. It's not a problem. Yes, you need to plan a little bit, but it is available. We are bunkered in China, in Singapore, Gibraltar, in Europe, in the US. It works. So we believe that's the best solution going forward. So we will continue to invest down in new ships using LNG as the basis. To your last point, the existing fleet. The existing fleet is the base for most of the people in this room, and the existing fleet burns conventional fuels. So our view here is that we obviously need to continue to focus on, number one, operate our existing fleet in the most efficient manner possible. Invest money every time you dry dock to put on the best paints to make sure the hull doesn't get fouled. Clean the house. This sounds not very interesting maybe, but if your hull is fouled, your consumption can increase with 10 to 15%. So these minor things that we can do is very, very important. And I think this whole idea that we should just scrap the existing fleet and replace it with new ships overnight is a complete misunderstanding. That's simply not feasible, not possible, and it would be basically a disaster for world trade and for the safety of energy supplies around the world. So we need to basically manage the existing fleet as best as we can, the most efficient way we can, to the end of their life, and then we will have ordered new vessels which are obviously more efficient. Thank you.
Jerry, Capital Clean Energy Charis is positioned as a forward-looking player in the clean energy space. How do you see these shaping the financial viability of decarbonization initiatives for shipping companies, and are there any specific measures implementing to offset potential cost impacts?
Thank you, Elina. I think your original observation about the market-based measures that have been recently introduced and we are now expecting on a global scale have made all the difference in the world, and overall they are very welcome by us. Svein just described our vision as well when it comes to lower our carbon footprint over the next 20 to 30 years. We have made a very conscious choice to go with dual fuel LNG. We have one of the largest new building programs in tankers, VLCCs, Suezmaxes, LR2s. We have also 4 Aframaxes trading right now, dual fuel LNG ships. And we do think that in view of the current framework, the EU ETS and Fuel EU, there are increasingly more incentives to adopt established technologies and established fuels like LNG, especially under Fuel EU effectively, and over the next 20 years, you are safe and you are generating a benefit. All other technologies, of course, some of them are more mature than others, but they're not necessarily available on the same scale and volume. Now, in terms of our general strategy, both to take advantage of these market-based measures that we have seen the EU adopt first, and I think we should see more of it globally. It's not only the bet on dual fuel LNG, but also the divestment of older assets. I mean, as far as capital clean energy Charis is concerned, but also the wider capital group, we have divested of dozens of vessels with an average age of close to 8 to 10 years, and been replacing them with fuel-efficient, predominantly dual-fuel ships. I should say, in order just to add to the vision, because as Svein correctly pointed out, not all technologies are apt for all types of shipping. Some of them, like potentially carbon capture or ammonia, could also be attractive under the right conditions. We have, for example, ordered the first dual-fuel VLACs, dual-fuel ammonia VLACs. And the reason is not because we expect that ammonia, blue or green, will be readily available in 2027 as a fuel in the same way that LNG is, but potentially a very large ammonia carrier that is carrying the cargo can, in the same way that the dual-fuel LNG burn ammonia. On the liquid CO2 carriers, for example, we're also working on a project whereby we will have carbon capture on board. One of the key issues, I think, as we heard before in a previous panel of carbon capture, is where do I store the captured carbon? Well, and how do I liquefy it? On an LCO2 vessel, you have both a liquefaction plant as well as storage. So there, for example, carbon capture can be a good solution. But overall, I think there are solutions out there that are suitable for certain types of ships or for certain types of trade. I am still a little disappointed by charterers in terms of the way that they see the investment in dual-fuel ships by owners. We still need to see charterers support this type of initiatives because they do involve very large additional capex. They do involve additional risk on behalf of ship owners, and especially the ones that are big in this business, and there are quite a few energy companies that are big in the LNG business. They should be also supporting a little more generously those initiatives when it comes to dual-fuel ships.
How is Neda Maritime preparing for adoption of alternative fuels or new technologies? If you can share with us the challenges you anticipate in retrofitting or updating your fleet to meet the target.
Thank you, Elina. It's a pleasure being in the panel with such distinguished colleagues. The question Elina posed is interesting. I mean, we are a traditional ship-owning company with a long history. We have navigated through times of significant changes and challenges, transition from external combustion engines to internal combustion engines, or recently transition from single to double hulls. The situation, however, today is unique. For the first time in the history of shipping, we do not see a unified transition from one means of propulsion or one type of fuel to another, sails to steam or steam to diesel. And at the same time, that legislation seems skewed in favor of vessels operating on defined routes and larger companies, which have the scale to enter into long-term agreements and also shift along the value chain, entering directly into fuel production and distribution. We are already seeing this with big public companies for whom shipping is only a fraction and in some cases a small part of their business model. Now, the legislation framework is a serious issue. The IMO measures will result in costs, both direct costs in terms of GHG fees and fuel prices, and indirect costs through additional compliance costs. Now, how these measures are designed will have a substantial impact on the industry sectors and trades. There are other issues of regulations related to poorly drafted pieces of legislation, such as the CII, which created the flawed metric that punishes ships for issues outside their control. Now, to reach the core of your question, in Neda, we firmly believe that the timing of implementation of any technological solution is of essence. So we have invested heavily for many years now in digital technological solutions to maximize the efficiency of the existing fleet. So we introduced an in-house data acquisition system since 2015, which enabled us to evaluate thoroughly technological solutions, low friction paints, types of ESDs, scrubber performance, etc., in an objective and systematic way. Now, by this means, we are making progress and we see efficiencies coming in the direction of reducing carbon emissions, but at the same time, we create the time required for alternative fuels and propulsion technology to be developed in a way that can be practically implemented for tramp ships. Last but not least, we firmly believe in collaboration. This is why we have partnered with LRG and 4 other major shipping companies. Jerry and Charis represent 2 of these companies in the panel to create the Maritime Emission Reduction Center. The Merck is committed to overcoming the technical, financial, and commercial barriers that hinder the adoption of the solution and practices that require to decarbonize the existing fleet.
Thank you. Charis, Starbuck Charis is known for its commitment and innovation. Could you share some insights into the emerging technologies that Starbuck is exploring or adopting to achieve decarbonization goals? And how do you assess the role of digitalization and particularly AI in optimizing fuel efficiency?
Thank you, Elina. And thank you to the Capital Link team for inviting me here today. Hello, everyone. To your question, Elina, I have paid careful attention to previous panels and to my fellow panelists here, and I'm afraid there are no surprises in what I'm going to talk about. What is perhaps interesting is that by now, decarbonization and technology is guiding every single aspect of our business, literally, starting with fleet composition to the way that we monitor, we operate, we maintain our fleet, but also when it comes to the people we hire, to the processes that we follow, to the systems that we use, everything by now is directed by our efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and also to digitalize and automate our processes. Now, starting with our fleet composition, we are actively renewing our fleet. In the past 18 months, we have sold 27 of our older, less efficient vessels, and at the same time, we're placing new building orders, linking that to technology. The new building vessels, they have new main engines, they have shaft generations, they have alternative marine propulsion called ironing to connect with the shore power at port. So therefore, we're leveraging new technology when it comes to our new building ships. At the same time, when we look into the maintenance of our vessels, we are inspecting our vessels more frequently. We have more frequent hull cleaning. We accelerate dry docks. And on the technology front, we are very much interested in remotely automated hull cleaning robots. We see a lot of potential there. We have a number of pilots taking place in terms of existing solutions. Keeping the hulls of our vessels clean, as my fellow panelist already mentioned, is one of our top priorities. Monitoring our fleet, the technology there that by now is a usual suspect is artificial intelligence and digitalization. We have high-frequency data on board our vessels. We have a dedicated team in the office. We leverage this data in order to monitor the performance of our ships, to take prompt action. Whether this is a technical or operational issue, we're able to make fast decisions in order to address overconsumption and this way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In terms of operations, AI and digitalization is also of great help. On that front, we are able to capture and analyze real-time data related to weather, for example, wind, currents, but also congestion and market-related information. And this way, we are able, or at least we aim, we believe that we try to optimize our routes, our speeds, but also reduce idle time. Technology, of course, is developing fast. We expect that along with our existing efforts, we will be seeing further advancements. So to your question, Elina, what is the future here also when it comes to AI and digitalization? We would like at some point to be able to perform predictive maintenance on board our vessels using AI. We are already leveraging the technology in order to have reports that are required for DCS, for MRV, for other stakeholders with regards to our emissions, but also to be in a position to compare the efficiency of different solutions that reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. This data is very important. Of course, optimization of this data is another question. And here technology is another area where it can help us compare the performance of different vessels and be in a position to identify technical and operational issues that we can work on and reduce consumptions and therefore improve the efficiency of our fleet. Thank you.
Thanks, Charis. I come, Thomas, to you now to kind of look at it from a container perspective. So sort of asking the similar question to Charis from your end and looking at it from the lens of the containership sector. How are the challenges, dynamics, and opportunities different, and at the same time enable competitiveness and operational efficiency?
Thank you, Elina, for the question, and to Nicholas for inviting me to join the panel. So Charis started off by saying that she had little to say that would surprise people. I have even less to say that will surprise people, but I will at least pose it within the context of the part of the industry that I know best. So GSL is a container ship owner. We own 68 container ships. We're listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and we are tonnage providers to the container ship liner operators. And what that means is that we provide all of our tonnage on a time charter basis, meaning that our charterers pay for the fuel. So ultimately what that means is that fuel choices will be taken by the charterers, and where they lead, we will have to follow. So that's the sort of the long-term plan, if you call it that, seeing how things play out, and then developing our fleet accordingly. Now, in the meantime, it's all about optionality as far as we see it. And what optionality means is spending comparatively modest amounts of capex on making material improvements to our existing fleet. We have an order book of 0 at the moment, so it's all about our existing fleet. And the things that we're doing echo very much what everyone on this panel has said already. So the 4 pillars of our strategy are retrofits, so energy-saving devices being retrofitted to the ships. It's making sure that all of our ships are able to burn biofuels. It's employing high-frequency operating data for precisely the same purposes as Charis has just described. And there, as far as AI is concerned, we have no idea really what potential that's going to unlock. But if you don't have the data, you don't have the option to use the AI. So we're capturing the data with a view to seeing those capabilities evolve over time. And then finally, and this is a sort of slightly longer shot, as we've heard on various other panels, we've invested in a carbon capture and storage venture with various other strategic partners. It looks promising, but where everyone was excited at the outset, it's becoming clearer and clearer how many challenges there are, and we've heard about them all on the carbon capture panel. But if someone is able to crack that nut, then we think there's huge power in the use of carbon capture as a transition to a sort of a greener future. So for us, it's all about optionality, maximizing optionality at the moment and reducing emissions to the extent we can for our liner operator customers to allow them to compress the carbon footprint of their own supply chains, which they in turn are under pressure to do from their customer base. So that's really where we sit at the moment.
Thanks, Thomas. We still have some more time for more questions, so I'm just going to ask some. I just want to ask from a greener shipping perspective. I guess, Thomas, you can start with you, and then perhaps Jerry or Svein want to add also. How is a customer demand influencing greener shipping options and influencing your company's strategy?
Yes, I suppose that picks up from where I left off, which is that our customers are under increasing pressure from their customers, the cargo interests, to green their supply chains. So we have to do whatever we can to assist in that regard. And one of the things that we've learned from, I suppose, the last few years of upgrading our vessels is you can upgrade a vessel and make it 15 to 20% more efficient at the asset level, but all of those efficiencies can be lost very, very quickly if the asset is operated too aggressively by our customers, by the liner operators themselves, who control, the operating profile of all of these ships. So we're sort of pivoting what we're doing to try to give our customers, the liner operators, the tools to optimize the operation of our ships collaboratively. And that comes back to, as Charis was saying, the digitization of processes, capturing live high-frequency data from the ships themselves, and then sharing that, once again, live with the liner operators themselves to try and smooth out the operational ups and downs, which allows the assets themselves to be operated far more cleanly. So I think a big key here is, as you've heard it from pretty much everyone on this panel, collaboration, and data is one of the tools to facilitate that collaboration, in our view anyway.
I think that in terms of customer demand for greener shipping, as you described it, it ties very well again with market-based measures that we discussed earlier. When there was no EU ETS and many of the energy majors came out with ambitious agendas, liner companies as well, right, about greener shipping, it was a soft commitment. You would hear that energy major so-and-so or liner so-and-so want to reduce their carbon footprint. But in the end, when it came to a discussion about charters, traders would have a different P&L to the chartering department and so on and so forth. And then all this wouldn't tie with the overall soft agenda that we presented. But as soon as we saw numbers, so the externality was internalized with a specific price, suddenly now all charters will actually measure the cost of greener shipping, and they will pay for it. In LNG shipping, the big question is unit freight cost. How much do I pay in order to move a unit of LNG from point A to point B? Now, in that calculation, almost all charters, they are baking in the cost of EU ETS and fuel EU, increasingly so, and potentially also an IMO carbon levy. So that type of, and this is thousands of dollars per day. So if we invest in innovative engine that reduces methane slip, that's, let's say, by a ton, that's 25 times 1 times 75, and that translates into, $2,000-3,000 per day. And that's the benefit that you would get. Of course, headline rates and are always there, and there is always resistance. But the fact that we now have pricing for carbon, that helps also customers to understand what is the cost of greener shipping, and also for owners to get a return. So I think, any progress in that direction should be welcomed by the industry.
Can I add a couple of things? I think it's clear that today, in most markets, our charters are starting to understand the fact that with EU ETS, with fuel EU, there's a cost attached to how much energy you consume and how much your vessel, the vessels that you charter, will emit. So it has really nudged the whole maritime industry, of course, but also our customers in the right direction. I think the most important now, in order to keep that going, is obviously that the IMO comes out with the midterm measures, as it's called, so that we have a uniform type of environmental regulation across the whole world, if that works, hopefully, but most places, because it's not the case today. Today, these regulations are only within the EU, and obviously that is not helpful to basically push the industry, the charterers, and also the owners in the right direction to make new investments in new vessels that have much better efficiency and lower emissions. I think the best example of this, of course, is also what Jerry already mentioned. I think in the LNG sector, we are definitely seeing this clearly today. I think we are seeing it also on the tanker side, because when there is a penalty for not using the most efficient vessel, the market will respond and the charters will understand that. So I think unfortunately on the dry side, it's still quite a way to go, but we are fully convinced it will also come there.
I think we've got a few minutes left, so I'm gonna go to Charis and also possibly to the Yorgos, just to get the dry side part of the equation. How do you see that? Obviously, as mentioned, perhaps more challenging than some of the other sectors.
I think we need to clarify first what we have ahead of us in terms of regulation, and the immediate development is January 2025, where we have the FuelEU coming into effect. The dry bulk fleet is mostly burning HFO, VLSFO, so the only way for the dry bulk fleet to basically comply with FuelEU and to reduce the intensity of the fuel is to use biofuels. So this is what we plan as a company to do. I don't see any other way for us to reduce the intensity of our fuel, and for as long as the cost of biofuels is reasonable and it makes sense financially to pay the price, I assume that the rest of the industry as well will opt to burn biofuels and to comply with the FuelEU. Now, the question becomes more challenging when we enter 2027, when we expect that there will be both a technical measure but also an economic measure implemented at the global level. This is at least what the IMO has agreed on. And then we will be faced with a carbon price but also a technical measure, not only in and out of Europe, but also with regards to the global trade. So there, if it is only biofuels that is our available solution, that will be a big hurdle, because we expect that the prices will increase significantly, and also biofuels, as well as bio-LNG, bio-methanol, they rely on biomass, and there are supply constraints with regards to biomass, and there is also competition from other sectors when it comes to biofuels. Therefore, we cannot rely only on biofuels moving forward in order to achieve the greenhouse gas emission reduction targets of our industry. A lot has been discussed today about carbon capture and storage. In our view, given the many challenges that the green fuels are faced with, we believe that the CCS has a lot of potential to act complementary to the green fuels. We are piloting a number of different technologies around CCS, and we do hope that the different challenges around the high cost, the energy required, but also the challenge of how to dispose the carbon that was discussed extensively during the previous panel, we do hope that we will see developments around those areas in order to be in a position to use the technology on board our vessels. Now, when it comes to other fuels, hydrogen-derived fuels, ammonia, methanol, everyone's aware of the challenges around those. There needs to be huge investments with regards to infrastructure, investments in renewables, investments in electrolyzers, in transportation. And on that front, we do hope to see advancements. For example, it would be a breakthrough if we see technological advancements around the safety risks of ammonia or around direct air capture that would enable the offtake of the production of green methanol. So we are hopeful that these are developments that will take place in the longer run. But as I said before, these are not for the foreseeable future. For the foreseeable future, we have the existing solutions that we have already touched upon that refer to improvements in energy efficiency, technical operational measures. We do have the biofuels that are available and are safe to burn. And at the same time, we are working closely, as George mentioned, the Athens-based Maritime Emission Reduction Center. We try to work as closely as possible with other companies, other organizations, in order not only to benchmark existing data for technologies that we use, but also to support the advancement of new technologies, both for the short run, but also for the longer run. Thank you.
The issue of decarbonization is not a simple one. It's a very complex issue, but if I had to choose, I would say that we have three main hurdles. The first one is the fluid legislatory framework. The second one is the alignment of interest amongst the stakeholders, and this is a very important one. It is not necessarily true that the owner or the tramp operator and the charterer have exactly the same ideas of how the ship is operated, and I'm speaking as a representative of a company that manages bulk carriers and tankers, but I believe Thomas would have exactly the same opinion. The third one is the unavailability of green fuels, and solving these three issues is a necessary, not sufficient, but necessary condition to improve the decarbonization pace. Now, of course, there are also opportunities, and perhaps the pressure for decarbonization may possibly allow for solutions that in the past were politically not acceptable. An example of that could be nuclear energy application, which of course is, can be a topic of a totally different panel.
Just to conclude the session, just to summarize just some key takeaways that I've noted down is, I think we know no single fuel for one ship type. Different sectors will make different decisions in the longer term. There's a maturity in the market, in the industry, and from a charter perspective, but also from the investment readiness. And we can see that, as you've described today, across the value chain. And also about technology and what a big part it plays, and sharing some of the, thank you for sharing some of the initiatives that each of your companies are taking towards that, in terms of there are things that we can do today to support the transition of decarbonization and meeting the measures. So thank you very much for your participation. Thank you also to Capital Link.